Yo, what's going on guys, Dorki here, and in this video I'll be going over the top 5 mistakes that I see the most, even at the highest level. There are many times where individuals can improve outside of just doing more damage or healing. Oftentimes, people will ask, how do I become a better tank, DPS, or even healer? What separates me from the best of the best? And to answer that, there is more than just being better at one specific thing. As my friend Yummy TV has said many times, the best way to improve is to record yourself and learn from your mistakes. But what exactly should you be looking for? I've done keys of all levels with friends, pugs, and some of the best players. What I'll be covering will be some of the most common mistakes I see that apply for every role and to players of any key level. Hopefully after this video, everyone out there can look for ways to improve their own gameplay. The first mistake I'd like to talk about is positioning mobs properly. This is mostly something the tank handles, but DPS and healers can also help. Keeping mobs together for even cleave is extremely crucial when it comes to improving kill speed on trash. Many times on stream I get asked how my group or other high level groups are doing so much more damage. It's not always just the skill or the gear of the players. By keeping mobs grouped properly and in ground effects like flame patch, your group is effectively doing way more damage. To group mobs effectively, here are some things to know. When tanking melee mobs, always tank them on top of the ranged or caster mobs. Always have a range kick the caster mobs for them to move into the pack. If you need to move ranged mobs that aren't casters, the best way to deal with this is to use line of sight or outrange the mobs. A lot of tanks don't know this, but by ranging or using line of sight, ranged mobs will actually run until they can reach you. When kiting as a tank, don't just leap away and run as far as possible. A tank should always try to keep mobs stacked and kite in circular patterns. A lot of tanks who kite only worry about getting away, but that is a huge mistake. Similarly, dealing with sanguine ethics will heavily test the tank's abilities. During Sanguine Week, a tank should always be moving when mobs reach below 10% HP. At no point should a tank just stand there and wait until the mobs are dead before moving. It is heavily underlooked when people think about what a tank's job is in M+. Having a really good tank that can position mobs properly will easily make a keep much easier to time. The next point I want to cover is using your utility more. There are way too many players out there who only think about numbers and not using their utility. Going back to the previous point, everyone should assist with positioning mobs. Druids especially will have abilities like Typhoon or Ursos, Priests with Shining Force, Monks with Ring of Peace, Hunters with Binding Shot and Tar Trap. All these classes have ways to help tanks with kiting or keeping mobs stacked. At any point if the tank is moving or mobs are being displaced, it should be top priority to be using something to keep them together. When it comes to mob control, DPS and healers should use their disrupts more. For example, fire mages have Dragon's Breath, a 20-second cooldown AoE disrupt that no other class has, and it's crazy that it's not used more. I've played with Mode, an amazing healer by the way, who would go out of his way to use Nox for grouping mobs, run in to use Fear for stopping casts, and even mind control on certain ranged mobs to get them back into a group of mobs. A player who actively helps the group is much more helpful to your key's success than someone who is just doing damage or healing. This is primarily aimed at healers and ranged DPS, but everyone should use their utility more. The third big mistake that I see a lot is not using defensives proactively. Too many players out there will sit on the defensives until they are about to die. Defensives shouldn't be used reactively, but instead as a way to mitigate damage. Just because a mechanic won't kill you doesn't mean you shouldn't use your defensive. This is especially true on Prideful or certain Shadowlands bosses. Doing this will help your healer, allowing them to heal others more or to put out more DPS. The only exception to this is if you need your defensives for a certain part of a boss fight, or if a group is spacing out what is being used, but more often than not, defensive cooldowns are being sat on. There are so many times during Prideful where people wouldn't pop their cooldowns until they see their HP is literally at 10%, then they press something like Barkskin, but that's not how it should be used. They should be used almost as often as DPS cooldowns throughout the dungeon. People always wonder how high level groups can do certain bosses on a high key with only a certain amount of HPS like 6k, but when they pug a lower key, they can't do it with the same amount of HPS. It's not just about HPS, it's about how well your team plays and coordinates their defensive cooldown usages. The next point I want to cover is a bit of a hot take. Healer and tank damage matters a lot. Full disclosure, this doesn't mean you should only care about damage as a tank or healer. But by doing more damage, not only is the key going faster, but trash packs and bosses are also easier to do. A lot of bosses in Shadowlands specifically have what I would call softened rages. Bosses like Hakar from the other side, if killed quickly, doesn't actually pose that much of a threat. This is also a large reason for Vengeance Demon Hunter's success in M+. They are capable of pulling very large, killing the pack extremely quickly during their defensive windows, making it easier than it seems. And this is why often you might see Holy Paladin players like Elismir doing really well even in a non-Holy Paladin meta. Even though Paladins might not have the greatest healing like a Resto Shaman may, it is capable of doing so much damage that they can basically kill them before they run out of cooldowns. I've seen way too many players out there who don't care about healer or tank damage, and it's such a mistake to overlook the DPS they are capable of. Like I've said, healing and surviving as a tank definitely takes priority, but at no point should the damage of a tank or healer be disregarded. If you ever watch top level players like JB do a hard healing boss fight, a lot of times the bosses are dead so fast because of Heart of the Wild and Convoke that there ends up not being much to heal to begin with. This leads to my next point, which is about priority damage. This mostly applies to DPS players but can be true for everyone. The most important damage is the damage that either speeds up the key or the one that makes a pull or boss safer. In Shadowlands specifically, this is very big when it comes to safety. Too many players don't understand the dangers of higher level prides or bosses that pose a massive threat. If DPS players are holding cooldowns on pride, not only are they delaying the key, but they are also making it extremely hard on the healer or potentially wiping the group. Think back to all the times a group has wiped a prideful because everyone's doing 2k DPS, and the pride's living for more than 40 seconds. Also, they can blow their damage on the pole immediately after for massive overall. People care way too much about overall even in the highest keys, and it's crazy because that's not what times keys. You don't gain time or safety by popping CDs and AoEing down little droplets that pose 0 threat and don't actually save any time. You gain time by doing priority damage on larger or scarier mobs. A prime example is this stitchwork in Necrotic Wake. There's no point in AoEing the little mobs because they'll get passively cleaved down. If DPS single target down the stitchwork while passively cleaving, not only is it safer, but it's also faster because the stitchwork is what bottlenecks the speed of the pull. A huge example is also this Hall's mini-boss. The priority here are the souls followed by the mini-boss itself. Damage on the manifestation do not matter. Oftentimes you'll see mages using Flame Strike on these mobs, but that is a huge priority damage loss, all for the cost of more overall. It's the minor mistakes like these that really add up by the end of the dungeon. I hope that with this video, everyone out there can improve individually by doing more than just how do I improve my overall. That is all for the video. Thank you all for watching. If you liked the video, send me a like, comment, and subscribe. I had plans on making some VOD review videos. If anyone's interested enough, they can leave a comment somewhere or just leave it in my Discord. DH is top followed by Guardian Brew Paladin. Oh my god. I don't think that's exactly true. I think they're all pretty close. I hate quaking.
Wait, nobody was even on you though.
I walked into T-Sock and it got owned.
We don't have any reses, do we?
Yeah. Did you guys lost by the way?
No.
Nice.